Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming guys with a deck profile update on my Rezael deck. So we are in the new year. First deck profile I thought I'd give you guys is the update to Rezael from set 5. This deck has improved a lot, hasn't it? Since the last time I profiled it. Yeah, we got some nutty support from set 5. Of course, the new Rezael Vita is insane. Um, from what I've seen with this deck, as soon as you hit Persona Ride in this deck, you should be winning more times than often. The power level is definitely substantially increased. However, I do have some grievances with this deck. It's a little bit heavy on the grade 3s, which I'm not a huge fan of. But it definitely is powerful once you get the ball rolling, when you get to grade 3 onwards. So if you can get to that point, you should be good. But of course, one of the main contenders right now in the meta is Leather Dress, because that deck's turn 3 is kind of bonkers. But yeah, Rezael is a good contender though. Still a really good deck. Probably like the second best deck in the format, I would say. But yeah, I thought I'd give you guys an update to the deck, show you guys what I've done to it. I know that with this deck it's kind of solved, but with me in particular, I don't have any Valtroses, so I can't do like that build, although I have leaned more towards it, because the alternative build is of course doing the Keter build, which um, grievances aside with the Keter it is still good, obviously, because it gives you a good early game push, but I just personally don't like playing, Wisdom of Beginning in a deck stacked with grade 3s, basically, so I like to actually have shield value on my cards, and with this sort of deck, I feel like you kind of want to try and get to the late game, so I've tried to accordingly put stuff in the deck that will help me get there, so yeah. Anyway, without further ado, we'll go into the deck, and I'll show you guys what I'm playing. So, to start with, of course, we have the typical ride line for Reziol, playing the Tranquilla, to get towards the Saragon, obviously, for more consistency, because as soon as we get to that dog, we're good. We're good to go. Of course, the Essential will resurrect a grade 2 from your drop zone when you ride your grade 3. And Reziel, of course, still pretty good. The downside to Reziel was that he just didn't give power to the units that you called back. Of course, in circumstances where you were called Nilbris, that was good, because he would get 10k power. But I've also noticed with him that we are popping that divine skill a lot earlier now, because not only does it give you the extra draw from the extra drive check, but also just having that sustainability to like not die is also pretty crucial right now. So that's why we're sticking to him in the right deck and not playing like the king like straight away, basically. Which, speaking of the king, going into the grade 3s, we are of course playing the 4 new Rezael Vita, the Fated King of Miracles. Yeah, this guy's kind of insane, isn't he? So not only does he count as a Persona Ride, he gets an extra 5k power for every original Reziel in your soul, so it doesn't count himself. But yeah, he just naturally gets bigger. And then the big wall of text that you see, it's basically the same skill as the regular Reziel, that you call to back equal or lower to your damage. But he has an extended skill now, which, well, part of the skill, which is you can put an original Reziel from your hand into the soul. And if you do so, you can resurrect a grade 3 or less from your drop zone to a rear. And then if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, all your units that were called by this effect get 5,000 power. So those 3 units in total will get all bigger, all of them hitting, much better numbers now, much better magic numbers. And yeah, you can now do 5 attacks pretty easily now. You could before, but it was a little bit more awkward with like the grades and your damage zone. But yeah, now you can just like throw an original Reziel into the soul and then just call back any grade 3 or less. So you can call like a Nilbris, which will get power. But of course, like the main target for the late game when you're at 4 damage is calling the Gabwillius back, which we'll go over him in a second. So yeah, playing for Vita because we really want to see him for turn 4. He's basically the Persona right now, which is kind of funny because we still need to play 3 of the original Reziel. So at the times where you don't see King for some reason, you can Persona Ride with this if you wanted to, but yeah, you're mainly just playing 3 of these for the cost of Vita, just to get the card into your soul, to get the extra call out for the multi-attack. Just move those over a little bit. But yeah, pretty straightforward. I was trying to be cute with Reziel and try to play 2 to try and minimize the amount of grade 3s, but honestly, you kind of just want to play 3 to maximize your chances on getting that extra call. So yeah. And Lex for the grade 3s, we have 2 copies of Gabwelius. So this guy's pretty good. I actually kind of underestimated how good he was going to be. So when you have a Persona Ride turn with Vita, and you end up calling this out, with a booster, this guy can get to like 60,000 plus sometimes. It just gets big. Um, you also get that drive check as well, which is just crazy pressure. Like if you combine that with a divine skill, through the Rezael, you're going to be doing 4 drive checks that turn, which is just really, really scary. So yeah, I think like 2 Gorbelius is fine. I didn't want to do like 3 or 1. I felt 1 is just kind of irrelevant at that point. 3 is way too many in my opinion, but what I did do was that I decided to put 1 copy of the Caliburn in the deck, because I feel like with this can give us more ways to dig for the other pieces in our deck, things like the Vita and the Reziel to get those skills going. And also it is a resource generator, and that gives you counter charge or a soul. Well, counter charge with soul, if you need them. But yeah, it's mostly there for the draw, I'm not gonna lie. And also, one of the things I noticed with this deck is that the hand tends to deplete really quickly in the early game. Like, because of course the opponent knows that as soon as you get to the late game, you're going to start generating that advantage engine and get the, the snowball rolling basically down the hill. So with this is basically to help recuperate our losses by, guarding more efficiently early game and trying to like stem the bleeding. So this helps us catch up basically and helps us get to like more pieces to help fill field basically. So yeah. But that's it for the grade 3s. So pretty straightforward. I feel like the ratios of these have pretty much been defined by now. But that is what I decided to do there. So for the grade 2s, again, it's pretty simple. We are playing the 4 copies of Nilbris. This guy gets really big when you call him out with Reziel, and he gives you soul, draws you cards, stacks the top of your deck. He does everything. Like, he does everything. One of the best discard targets, though, for the ride line, because you want to get this guy in your drop zone for your turn 3 to then resurrect it from the drop. So in the meantime, you're going to be filling your field up with things like Cadwalla, which you're also playing 4 of. You could do 3 or 4 with this, depending on what else you have available, but I went for 4 just for consistency purposes, because with me not having things like Valtrosa, Cadwalla is like one of the only enablers for me to have like an early game now. So I want to make sure I'm maximizing on these and then trying to get into one. Because you can actually generate resources through this without having to like, use a counterblast basically, which you kind of want to save for the Reziel turn. So yeah. And also just the amount of grade 3s we have in this deck that we want to see, this guy gets us to them as well. And then if we don't need any of those pieces, we can just draw a card and just help refill hand and maybe get some shield value. So yeah, Cadwalla, really solid. And then the grade 2 I decided to put in replacement of some other options. I decided to put 2 copies of Biscotti in because, like I said, I feel like with this deck, the hand size gets really, really deplenished like in the early game. So Biscotti really helps you with like guarding those really small pokes that the opponent might throw at you without really like neglecting your hand size that much. So you can like block a small attack, but then get a draw out of it still. So you're digging through your deck for pieces still, but then you're also optimizing your hand to like maybe get more shield out of it as well. So yeah, this is a bit more of like a defensive option. And of course, using it for the ride line is also decent because we only really need the energy for Nilbris in the late game. So if we see this for like the early game stages, then we can do that. And also any excess counterblast, we could put into Biscotti as well. So you can also use that resource to use her as well. So that's pretty good. So yeah, that's it for the grade 2s. So pretty straightforward there as well. But Biscotti is basically the choice I decided to go for to fill the gaps, which I think she's a pretty good alternative to go with. I think the logic's there anyway. Alright, so for the grade 1s, we are playing 4 copies of Zergion. Of course, Advantage Engine McGee. You retire this, get a card, bring it back with Reziel, get more cards. It's a good booster. The only thing with this deck, though, that I will admit, is the consistency of Seragon depends on the opponent, because if they have a full board, it becomes a bit more awkward to get Seragon's skill off. So that is one downside when not playing like an order focus build. But you can turn the Seragons on, though, when you do get to the Caliburn, so that is something to take note of, since it does trigger when you also use an order that turn. But yeah, generally speaking, you will you usually have more reguards than your opponent, but just bear in mind, it is when you boost with it that you need to have more rears, so you can't really get cute and try and like poke into a reguard with the boost, since it has to trigger on boost to get the power and then retire it. So be a bit careful of that. But yeah, Seragon, of course, absolutely crazy card. And then to go alongside him, I actually decided to put 3 copies of Power Ram. I think that's what her name is. But yeah, she's pretty decent. Basically, she's a counterblast to call a unit down, equal load to your van, and then you draw a card. So she gives you a bit of, you know, early game advantage and just encourages you to rush a little bit in the early game with like things like your Cadwaller. But also one thing I really respect with her is that she is a 13k. In this deck, because a bunch of our grade 3s we want to keep in our hand, and Gabellius we want to put in the drop zone preferably, the call out with Vita later. The Power Ram's actually a good solidifier to make a field with, because it's a 13k on its own as long as you got 4 or more units, and then on a Persona ride, obviously, she'll be 23. So she can actually be a pretty decent attacker in some cases as well, but of course other times, she's a 13k booster, which is also good. So yeah. And then next we are playing 3 copies of the Aerial Sage. Of course our countercharger for Rezael. You could maybe do 4 of this if you wanted to, take out like a Power Ram or something, but yeah, I feel like 3's fine. You only really need 1 of them in rotation anyway with your Vanguard, but outside of that, it's also a 13k booster for your reguards, so that's something. But I feel like 3 is a good amount, but like I say, you could also do 4 if you want more consistency with that, so that's fine. And then, of course, the final grade ones, we, of course, have our 3 regular perfect guards and our 1 Elementaria to wrap up the grade ones. So that is that. So, moving on over swiftly to the triggers, we are playing the Red OT, because I do feel like this is the better of the over triggers to play in this deck, especially when you're having like a quadruple drive turn with like the extra drive check from Rezael's Divine Skill and then having the Garbellius. 4 drive checks, if you get the Red OT paired with a crit, and also the fact that Rezael can just put all of your crits back into the deck as well, yeah, red pairs up pretty well with that, because a restanding 100 million attack with a crit on it, pretty deadly, I've heard. So yeah, red OT is that I've decided to go with. And then for the rest of the triggers, it's pretty straightforward. We have our 4 skill crit, and of course our 4 regular crit as well. The 5k base for this can matter sometimes with your numbers and the grades that you're calling out, so do bear that in mind. But the skill crit's also nice just to help replenish your soul, just in case you need it for things like your Cadwallers and stuff like that. And the 2k power can go to Garbellius as well to make him a 15k, which can be good with a 8k booster or higher, so that's pretty decent. Then of course we are playing the 3 front triggers. 20k shield for this is really good this format. Also, this fronts in general work really well with Rezael anyway, you all know that. And the final trigger we're playing, of course, though, 4 heal triggers, just sticking to the vanillas for the deck. But you definitely could play some of the effect heals this format. Anyway, that is it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it for what it is. Typically, when it comes to like meta decks, I'm not really too fond of them. It's kind of weird. Like, I want to do well in my games, but I'm also like not completely passionate when a deck's just like rolling everything else, you know what I mean? Where it's like it didn't feel like much of a fight. But yeah, Rezael's still solid. And also to an extent the deck is kind of fun, you know, to generate just a bunch of advantage and just get a bunch of power multi-attack. But it is what it is. We'll have to see where they take this deck though, because I don't know exactly what they're going to do with it in the next arc of DivineZ. But yeah, the Vita build though is definitely really strong. I hope you guys enjoyed it for what it was, and yeah, I will be coming at you guys with some more content soon. I'm planning to do a discussion video on the new High Beast Grade 3, well, the Beast Tamer, I should say, from set 7, since I'm actually kind of excited to see what that does, so I'm going to give you a discussion video on that. And then I also have another deck profile based on like a sort of a race or archetype theme, which a commenter suggested to me recently, which I wasn't expecting to build, but I built it recently, and it's pretty fun, so I might profile that soon, but you'll see what that is. But anyway, that's it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. This is Guardian, signing out.